I remember one of the team members who did the protodome nearly died of heat and exposure when he was out there. And when I went to do the quad dome project, I got malaria. I had never gotten malaria. I wasn't expecting to get malaria in the desert with no water or mosquitoes, but I believe I picked it up in Jamena. And I knew I was at the right place for the right reasons, but I didn't know if I was ever going to get to leave. And with 120 degree heat in the shade, with no IV fluids, no IV tubing, let alone IV start kits.
And no one to put it in. I mean, you were the only medical person there.
Yeah, I had rehydration salts that I had picked up, and I still have to this day the small liter canteens that I would fill with water and add my hydration salts in, because I knew if I stopped drinking, I was going to die and look like a raisin.
So you kept those as the mementos of being saved out in the desert.
I do. I have them. To this day, I brought them home with me, and I keep them along with the cup I would bathe myself with. Because we actually, Human and I would bathe in the quad dome. Of course, there's no plumbing and no drain, but you could take 5 gallons of water in there and take a bucket bath, and it would fall on the ground, and by the time you left, it was dry for the next person. You just don't understand the aridity of the air and the way things are there. The other thing I remember after showering, on occasion, there was a place also I would brush my teeth, and where I would spit out from brushing my teeth, a tree grew. A thing sprouted, and it grew in 6 weeks to this height, and I was hoping it would still be there when I went back. And people knew that tree. There's, oh yeah, we remember that tree. But it actually got wiped out when they expanded the wall around the
That's
protodome.
too bad, because that could have been like the miracle tree.
It would have been the miracle tree.
This is where Saint Franklin spit out his toothpaste. We could have a shrine
You
there.
could have a pilgrimage to see the tree that sprouted new life in the desert, where one man spit out his toothpaste. But there were a couple other trees that I did recognize that we watered while we were there.
Now, when did you come back? It took how many? You were out there.
I was out
twice.
I believe on 2 occasions. Once to build the quad dome, and then again, and that was in January, February, where it was relatively cool, 120 in the shade.
2013.
Yeah, and then I went this year in February, March, which is really starting to heat up, and that was harsh too. I got sick again. I had gone out for the opening ceremony, the opening of the clinic after all these years and all this time and hardship.
Think about that, 2013 to 2017, and did you see really much change? I mean, there wasn't that much actually that had been done in 4 years, because things were so slow. Like literally for the hospital,
they had plastered it. They put plaster.
Abraham, I mean, I wasn't there, but Abraham said they would take an old beat up truck out to that mountain that we climbed and almost died on with the first team for the protodome, and they would with hammer and chisel out stone, haul it back, and build this thing literally, and to get water, like you said, it was a mile to 1.2 miles away.
Round trip.
They built the whole thing, bringing water on the back of a horse cart with two 5-gallon barrels welded together. And
50 gallons, so you had 100 gallons.
50 gallon, my bad. Yeah, the big 50-gallon drums welded together.
Welded end on end.
And that's how the water came, and they got the stone brought up by hand. And
I didn't know that's where the stone came from. I had no idea that's where you got the stone.
And using just local labor still. I mean, this was a completely, after you left in 2013 until I came back in January 2017, it was completely run by only local people. Yeah. And they made it happen. They got the fence in, they got the well in. I mean, we got scammed again on the well another time. That's a whole other story. I mean, there's so many things, and people would come, and the local medical officers were against us. They tried to keep us from opening. The political situation, but the people kept encouraging us. Every time we would come, people were saying, "When is this going to open?" We were so desperate. We're having to go to Sudan.
To have babies.
To Khartoum for any kind of medical care.
Yeah.
And so you came out, then finally we're like, okay, we think we've got the authorization.
Come out for the ceremony.
Regional medical officer who's been resisting us the whole way is finally going to have this, let us open.
Papers done and everything.
And I'm really sorry.
And it didn't happen. I traveled to the other side of the planet to see the opening of the clinic I designed.
Well,
and it doesn't happen.
My dad came too, and he was wanting to be there for the opening ceremony.
We had a good time. I enjoyed my time with your father. There's certain things that happen when you sleep together on the sand, on the hard sand, looking up at the stars. You bond.
But you know what's amazing how God works is, do you remember when I went to present you, to introduce you and my dad to the regional medical officer?
Yes.
This guy who had been
totally set against you.
He was losing our papers. He was refusing to set. He would not do anything. And the first day we went in to see him,
and he met your dad.
And I said,
"This is my
father." And he looked at me, and then he got up again. He came over with two hands. He shook his hand. He said, "This is your father. He came all the way out here to do this." Mm-hmm. And he was just, I could see.
He was stunned.
He even said, "I'm moved." I didn't think this guy could be moved by anything. And so at the end, I just mentioned in passing, I said, and what about those papers that we left here? Because I had to reintroduce the papers.
Remember those papers from
how
4
many
years
times?
ago?
Well, this was like once again. I mean, those I did like 3 times, and this was another one I'd done like a few weeks before. And he said, "Oh well," I started to be the same one. "I'm busy again. Maybe I'll get around to it later on this week." That afternoon, he called me. He'd never called me before. I'd always been the one to initiate contact. And he said, "Well, I looked through your papers and they look okay. I'm sending them off to Jamaica. By the way, how's your dad?" And then a week later, he came to visit the hospital for the first time. We'd been there for
he had never
how long?
come out.
And he had never come out. I mean, he's in a place where there's only one hospital. He had never come out to see this new hospital that's being built. But he came out, and again, first thing, "How's your father doing?" Came up and greeted him. "Oh, we're so glad to see you here." And I heard someone else told me that if the father is behind the son's project, it will succeed because the father is next to God.
Okay.
And so I think it was almost like he realized he couldn't fight
can't stop this.
Because
it's
if
God's
the father is behind this project,
God is behind it. I can't fight him.
He's fighting a losing battle.
Yeah.
And so even though my father was disappointed, I know you were disappointed that you didn't get to see the opening. If you hadn't come, who knows?
Who's knowing if it'd still be closed?
Probably wouldn't have opened. And praise God that
it did. And the first day it opened, what happened? The type of volume, because you're in the middle of nowhere. You really are. With miles and miles of nothing on the horizon. Except maybe 2 cell phone towers, I think I remember.
And a few mountains in the very far distance.
And a couple uninhabited mountains. There is nothing there. And then to have this open, the first day, what happened?
And it doesn't look like anything.
Because
these domes look like just piles of rocks. And until you go inside and you see it's got modern equipment and, state of the art, at least for that area. But I mean, maybe state of the art for the 1980s in America as well. But,
very futuristic for Robbie.
But not bad. But, you couldn't imagine there's anything there. There's nothing to attract them there except, even though we were frustrated by the fact it took 8 years.
To them, that's nothing.
But the fact that Abraham and his persistence and his example to the people and his patience, there was a time where one of the mayor's advisors found him in town and asked him, "When are you guys going to take these guys who scammed you on the land deal to court and get your money back?" Because Sarah and I lost personally about $20,000 on that whole project, between the building materials and the land and everything. And Abraham just kind of looked at him. He's got that way of kind of half closing his eyes.
You have to know Abraham to recognize what you're trying to communicate, but it's true.
And he said, we haven't come here for that. We've come here to help people. We're building a hospital, and we're just not interested in that kind of thing. And
that shook them.
And he just looked, and they're all Muslims. And he looked at and he just said, "If we were like that, this place would be a lot nicer place to live." And it was examples like that because we took the time and they saw our dedication and we became close and friends with the local people because they worked with us for 7-8 years. We became part of the family. When we opened, the first day, we saw 70 or 80 patients. And within a week, we had to turn people away. We literally could not see everyone a day. I had to go at 5 o'clock in the morning, and there was over 100 people waiting for me to have their names put on a list.
A waiting list.
Seen in 2 or 3 days. And people were so thankful, so grateful. We hit the ground running. And it's just been a blessing. In the first couple months, we had raised enough money through, because it's not free care. The government policy is it shouldn't be free, and we also have to be able to support ourselves. But
That's right.
it's still so reasonable that everyone came because, and the government people were actually trying to force the governor to force us to raise prices because all the clinics and the hospital in Abishai were empty because they said our prices were so low.
Okay.
But anyway, despite that,
You were undercutting the competition so
because of the
much.
volume we were seeing, we had made enough money that we could start building an outpatient clinic in order to be able to see those patients so they didn't have to wait. So, I mean, again, God was just been behind this thing from the beginning.
And that was an important feature that I had in mind as I was thinking of designing this place or project, was that it needed to be self-sufficient financially. That you wouldn't have, so if the time ever came where this place was cut off from outside financial support or even human resources coming to visit or that type of, the traditional arrangements that we even still see in most AHI or Adventist Health International hospitals, there's a close, nice working relationship to Western organizations. Nothing wrong with that. But I made a strategic decision to attempt to arrange things that no outside help would be necessary for any reasons whatsoever. And yes, that would impact or influence the way things worked and what would be available. But the strength, the resilience of the design would allow it to pass through hard times, let alone the harsh environment. And think about, you just got solar power and panels this year, but for the previous time, we knew from the beginning that you could move from 120 degrees in the shade outside, or 130 to 35 in the sun, to 90 degrees inside the dome.
Which still sounds pretty hot, but the temperature change.
But the temperature change makes you feel as though you've come into the cold.
Yeah.
And to be able to have a place like that and not require gasoline or diesel to fuel a generator, to not have to purchase panels or wires, thick old copper expensive wires and battery systems to make the place functional, that was transformative. It lowered the budget consistently so that you could see patients for reasonable
But we
fees.
had to have electricity though.
Well, yes.
Because in order to be able to do surgery, and surgery is a big
part of what's happening.
And so we had to put in all the ugly cables and the solar panels and the batteries and the
But I
generator and
designed the
diesel.
place to have that. But it wasn't required. It's a super nice thing to have, and it makes it even better.
It would have stayed just a simple clinic.
It would have.
And
It
actually,
would have been fine.
And that's what it was supposed to be originally. It was actually, the interesting thing is this regional medical officer is the one who wanted me to turn it into a hospital. I originally presented to him as a clinic. Mm-hmm. And I think he got carried away and forgot his politics for a few moments and remembered that he was a doctor.
And said, make a hospital.
And it was funny because I brought that back onto him in the opening ceremonies and said, it's thanks to our regional medical officer that it has become the hospital. Because even to this day,
killed my clinic
he
idea.
still insists on calling it a clinic.
Even though the hospital was his idea.
Yeah. And even though we're doing major surgery, we're hospitalizing people.
It's a clinic.
And they're giving us all the things to report all the surgeries and everything. He still doesn't want to call it a hospital.
Of course, I remember my suspicion was...
But we don't care what it's called. All we care about is we're getting to take care of these people. These people are grateful. And I have to tell you what Abraham told me just a few days ago when he called me.
What's that?
Said, the imam, the biggest imam from Abu Ghudam, from the biggest mosque in Abu Ghudam, came a few days ago. And he said, I want to invite your staff to come to the mosque on a Friday, and we want to pray for this hospital because we know what you're doing is God's work. God has brought you here, and you're doing a great work for our people, and we want to pray for you on Friday in the mosque.
Oh, wow. That's big.
So it's taken a long time, but it's allowed us to form these relationships. You're not going to do that if you come in and just jam a project up, throw it up, and then say, let's go. Yeah. It had to be slow. They had to see us face difficulties. They had to see us persevere. They had to see us suffer. They had to see us be there over a long period of time.
Yeah. Not a month or weekend project.
And it frustrated some people in the West who said, why is it taking so long? People who donated funds for certain projects. And I just couldn't explain it to them in ways they could understand.
Until
but
you
in the
live
end,
there, you don't understand the difference
way it was supposed to be
between
done.
West and East mentalities. Until you live and experience it.
I've been there for almost 14 years, and
you still do
I
it.
think I'm just beginning to slightly understand a small amount.
Well, we're glad that you've been able to come after 14 years. You come to visit us. here at the Doctor's Inn, and please come back again and tell more stories. You have a new book I want to plug.
Okay.
You're gonna have more stories from your experiences.
It's from way back when I was still in Berry.
Mm-hmm. But still good stories.
They were made out of traumatic experiences, things that happened that I had to get off my chest, and so a lot of things happened in those years that, you know, if I hadn't gotten that off my chest, I'd probably be in the psychiatric ward somewhere.
Getting therapy.
Maybe I should be anyway, but you know, somehow this has prolonged my stay, and so yeah, it's therapy, and if other people can get something out of it, that's great. I called it Nasara encore because there's more of the stories, because that's what they call us over there. You've heard it. You've been called Nasara
plenty of times.
It's an Arabic term that means followers of the Nazarene or Christian. But it's become to be used throughout
More
Chad
of a derogatory
as a.
term, isn't
But
it?
No, in the Quran, that's what
Okay.
Christians are called.
Okay.
Is Nasara. But it hasn't been over the years in some places used derogatory. But in Chad, it's not. It's simply the word for foreigner.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Well, we're glad you're here as a foreigner, and I'll be a foreigner maybe over there sometime and see what we can do next.
We invite you back anytime, inshallah.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.